Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we dive into how CPGs are mastering omni-channel growth and are breaking barriers to sell on Amazon. My name is Dina Podner and I'm the marketing manager here at Marketplace Strategy. Marketplace Strategy is a strategic marketplace sales acceleration agency servicing clients from startups to Fortune 50 companies. We manage more than $1.5 billion in Amazon revenue in a variety of categories, from grocery to personal care, home improvement, electronics, furniture, and many more. Our team includes strategists, designers, writers, and advertising specialists trained and focused exclusively on Amazon. Before we get started today, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. If for any reason you have to step away or miss a portion of the webinar, the entire session recording and slide deck will be sent out as a direct email follow-up. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll bring them up during the question and answer portion at the end. And any unanswered questions will be answered via email in the next couple of days. Presenting today will be our CEO and co-founder, Drew Kraemer, and Jeff Walkoff, our VP of Sales and Marketing. To go over our agenda today, first we'll start off by exploring the CPG landscape and the current state of CPG online sales. Then we will move into the 4 areas of consideration to maximize omnichannel growth by diving into the impact of digital shelf space, the rise of challenger brands, how consumer buyer behavior is changing, and the complexities of Amazon's ecosystem. And we'll wrap up by talking about our key takeaways of today's presentation. To kick it off, I'm going to hand it over to Drew to get started.
Thanks, Dina, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. It's certainly an exciting time to be part in the CPG space. We're seeing acquisitions popping up almost on a weekly basis. We're seeing new brands being developed. Innovation and investment happening internally at a lot of major CPG companies, and it's really just an exciting time. Just want to start by talking about sort of the landscape and the growth overall and why omnichannel is so important for CPG. Last year we saw 35% growth in terms of online sales in the CPG space. If you compare that to kind of food and beverage, it is growing 10x. What any individual category is growing. BCG came out and talked about the CPG market growing overall in the US 2%. So you can see the really exciting part of CPG, where we're seeing it today and where we're going to see it in the next couple of years. If you look at a 58, almost $59 billion market in terms of online sales in the United States alone, it's really in the growth rate. So we're seeing CPG as far as online growth rate growing substantially. It really creates a ton of different opportunities. It does create some threats that CPG needs to be aware of. But overall, we're also seeing a shift from a lot of major CPGs to focus on e-commerce as a strategic growth initiative. 5-10 years ago, e-commerce was kind of looked at as a space where we were really unsure whether someone was willing to buy a personal care product or a pizza or a food item online, where as we're seeing the growth in the consumer buying behavior changing, it's really becoming an exciting part of the future of many brands today. So that's the CPG kind of overall landscape. I think when you look and dive in a little bit at some of the major CPG companies, so this is looking at the top 10 CPG companies. If we start with number 9, which is L'Oreal, you're seeing them grow from 8% to 11% as far as e-commerce as a total share of their sales growth. And this, represents a kind of a milestone of that 10% getting over that threshold for L'Oreal. It also represents a 37.5% increase year over year in terms of the percentage that e-commerce is driving versus their total overall sales. You look at a company like Unilever, who's done a lot of acquisitions, a lot of investment made in new brands. Overall, their sales growth actually declined 5.1%, but e-commerce grew 56% from 3.2 to 5% of overall sales. And then finally, Nestle, certainly a brand that here at Marketplace Strategy we're very close with as one of our clients. We saw a 31% growth year over year from 6.4% to 7.4%. And again, really that percentage of e-commerce sales growth within these companies are growing where it's now meaningful. It's a meaningful part of their business, and it represents a meaningful part of the future of their company. And really, when we look at what is shaping this, so we know the CPG market is growing, we know online is growing, but why? And when it really comes down to the consumer is really driving this change. The buying behaviors are changing. If you look at, 80% of online CPG shoppers buy from Amazon. 80%. If you look at 60% buy household supplies online. These are significant numbers when we look at buying behavior. History, again, it was kind of thought that some of these purchases wouldn't be made online. But as we see online retailers are creating significant advantages and driving significant value to consumers that are really the reason we're seeing some of these numbers that you see today. The value being delivered from online retailers really comes down to three major things. One is convenience. If you look at shipping times and the way the distribution of these online retailers are being optimized to fit the needs of consumers, you've got Amazon Prime, who kind of set the stage at 2-day free shipping. We've got Walmart rolling out next day shipping. You've got Amazon Fresh that is 1 to 2 hour shipping times within certain markets. The convenience of shopping online and having the product delivered to your door in very quick fashion is driving a lot of this change. Number two is selection. So we see on a daily basis in many of our clients' categories the selection of products. Not only we'll talk about variety packs, we'll talk about pack sizes being something to consider as you grow in terms of omnichannel, but also new entries into markets, new categories. It's the selection that online provides consumers is really unprecedented compared to an in-store experience. And then finally, price, where we're seeing a lot of the shift go from consumers being able to quickly browse from site to site, from product to product, and analyzing their purchase decision based on more quantitative metrics versus the look and the feel. Less of picking up a product in store, smelling a product, and that sort of buying behavior versus how many star reviews does this product have versus this product? What's the discount I'm receiving? What's the price point? So you're seeing this pretty big shift in the industry, which is really enabling a lot of this growth that we're seeing across the space. And obviously, Amazon being the largest disruptor in this space, which reported has 18% of the grocery market alone. Amazon is a place where, as you look to roll out omnichannel, as you look to roll out an e-commerce strategy that can take your brands into the future, starting with Amazon and mastering Amazon is a great first step. So we're going to talk a little bit about the four areas. Here at Marketplace Strategy, we talk to a lot of clients, and over the years, those conversations have changed from, okay, what do I need to do on Amazon specifically, or what are the tactical things I should be doing to sell products online, to really looking at, if I'm going to set up my business for success in the future, if I'm really going to maximize my growth for the future consumer, what do I need to change? What do I need to consider? And although there's a lot of considerations, we boil it down to kind of four major areas that we'll talk through, and then Jeff will provide some tactical tips that you can use almost immediately to kind of evaluate where your current organization sits and whether or not you'll be set up for growth. So it starts with really the impact of the digital shelf space. We'll start there. We'll move into talking about competition, talking about challenger brands and what we're seeing. We'll then move into, we talk a little bit about consumer buying behavior, how that's changing, what that means from an infrastructure standpoint. And then finally, we'll round out by really focusing on Amazon and the complexities of the ecosystem and how that can play into a growth strategy. So starting with the impact of digital shelf space, this is sort of called the infinite shelf space. We kind of call that a little bit of a myth. Yes, you can have as many products on the shelf as possible, which does create a ton of opportunity. There are equal opportunities for brands. We're seeing brands over the years that win based on strategy versus relationships. If this was 10, 15 years ago, a lot of our clients are looking at their buyers, they're looking at the relationships with the buyers and understanding and trying to predict future growth from those relationships. We see a lot of brands today winning because they have a digital strategy, they have an e-commerce strategy, and the digital shelf space opens up opportunities for those brands. So if you have an emerging brand in your portfolio, really focusing on e-commerce is a quick way to take advantage of the digital shelf space. Part of the reason that we think it's sort of a myth, and we talk about it as sort of it's an infinite shelf space, but there are limits, is that 70% of consumers do not go past the first page on Amazon. So yes, it's an infinite shelf space, but the brands that are winning today are really focused on that page one, focusing on the things that needs to do to get their top ASINs, their top SKUs visible to the consumer on page one. And also what we see across many brands is the opportunity that the digital shelf space provides for product launches, for product variations. We're seeing brands in the CPG space use Amazon as a testing ground to test product to market fit, to look at the sales analytics and say, is this something we want to broader, sort of roll this out at a broader scale, but using e-commerce to quickly do that. And this can open up new opportunities where innovation can be happening, actually get to market faster and iterate and roll out in a strategic way. So the digital shelf space definitely has benefits to it. It has a ton of opportunity, and focusing on page one will really help you maximize your space.
Great. Thanks, Drew. So, I mean, just to kind of put some tactical examples towards what Drew was just talking about, particularly as far as the infinite shelf space is concerned, really what we want to focus on here is if 70% of shoppers never make it past the first page of search results, and essentially it's essentially an even playing field to determine which products appear at the top of search rankings. It's important to understand the rules of the game that we're playing now. To do that, brands really need to understand and base their strategy on Amazon's A9 algorithm. At the end of the day, no matter what you do to try to improve your search visibility, whatever traditional digital marketing tactics like SEO that you follow, the number one component is going to be sales velocity. Products that sell more on Amazon, particularly what we're talking about here, perform better in search, which obviously drive more sales and feed that flywheel that Amazon is always talking about. So it's important to understand that core principle and do whatever it takes, not only to jumpstart, but to maintain that sales velocity. As Amazon has grown more competitive and active, and sales velocity is tougher to generate through simply organic means alone. Obviously, advertising has now become a vital step in generating sales velocity for products that aren't already discoverable. So, it's very difficult anymore to drive a product to the first page of search results, where 70% of people are shopping solely through organic means, optimizing copy and so forth. So advertising is really that way to get any product, regardless of its existing sales, to that first page. Another important piece of winning on Amazon that's often overlooked that we find is the buyability piece. And here we're talking about conversion rate. Conversion rate is a factor in Amazon's A9 algorithm, but that obviously more than anything affects sales, which drives sales velocity. To make sure products are converting, Amazon uses the term retail ready. We want to make sure the product image libraries are expanded. These simple things, not only with photos, with angles of the product or angles of the packaging, but it includes branded supplementary images with product features highlighted so consumers can really easily understand what the product is, what it does, why it stands out from competition. Meanwhile, things like the product titles, they should be optimized not only for search terms, but also for search engine result pages, particularly on mobile. So, as an example, do a search for one of your product categories on Amazon and scroll down the SERP, and you'll see very likely that there's a lot of ambiguity as far as what a product is, but more particularly the quantity, the variety. And that's all due to either a lack of information in the title or the main image, or honestly, in a lot of cases, a contradiction between the two. So, you might be offering a 6-pack for a particular product, but then the image just shows a single one of the products. So, it might make sense, in the context of that full product page, but if someone is scrolling through a search engine result page, it's important they can quickly find the result they're looking for. It's very important customers can really understand what they're seeing, what they're choosing online. Finally, many of you in the largest CPGs on Amazon, as Andrew mentioned, are using sort of this low barrier to entry to test new products, pack sizes, varieties, because obviously it's a heck of a lot easier and cost effective to launch and try things out on Amazon than it is in brick and mortar. And so we're certainly seeing people taking advantage of that infinite shelf space to try new things out without having to go through the same process they would otherwise through a brick and mortar environment.
Great, thanks, Jeff. I think the other thing that we're seeing on the second here on the list is really when you're looking at your competitive landscape, who your competitors are, how do your products stack up. That's changed significantly, even over the last couple of years when we look at omnichannel growth. And if you look at the brands that are really winning, they have a good understanding of who their competition is online, and often it's competitors that are very different from those in store. It really comes down to 56% of shoppers in a survey indicated they would buy a new brand if they're buying on Amazon, and that is telling in a lot of different ways. One, it's the loyalty that consumers have towards Amazon, the trust with Amazon. You have that Prime eligible product. There's going to be a lot of consumer trust. There's also the reviews that play a big part of it. But I also think it's the consumer's ability to analyze products, analyze features, benefits, and they're comfortable buying a product that they've never heard of. So this obviously creates a ton of opportunity. We talk about it's never been a better time in history to create a CPG brand. And this is really the reason you see a lot of acquisitions in our space. You see a lot of startups that are building their companies around e-commerce, is because there's a way with a good strategy you can get in front of consumers, and data shows us that these consumers are buying these products. So there's certainly a lower barrier to entry. We technically kind of see three competitive sets from our clients. One, these are your existing threats. These are the competitors that you see in store. We have e-commerce only brands. As I mentioned, these are brands that are really coming into almost every category and building companies and building products and supply chain to service the e-commerce customer. And then obviously a lot of the conversation is around Amazon's private label products, from Amazon Basics to products like Presto, on what they're doing to not only develop their own private label products, which I think is something that we advise clients all the time. It's very similar to how most brick and mortar retailers develop their own private label products. I think a lot of the questions come up when it comes to advertising, inventory placement. If you see them, Amazon pushing their private brands, which would be under sort of an our products tagline on the search engine result pages. But the rise of challenger brands is certainly something to be aware of. For example, if you search paper towel on Amazon, there'll be 5 different paper towel brands on Amazon. If you look at Kraemer on page 1, it's 5. So Amazon is definitely a place where you see a lot of these challenger brands, and we see a ton of opportunity for new brands to come in the space, but also legacy brands to look at who their competition is and make sure that they're doing everything to sort of fend them off and have a good e-commerce strategy.
Great. So one category that serves as a great example of how challenger brands have affected Amazon is coffee. In brick and mortar stores historically, a few brands, particularly Folgers and Maxwell House, have accounted for the majority of sales, primarily due to large percentages of physical shelf space being devoted to the product. However, if we take the first page of Amazon search results for coffee and envision that it's a physical store shelf, only about 30% of the shelf space is taken up by traditional brands, and Maxwell House and Folgers only account for about 10% of that space. The rest of the shelf is taken up by challenger brands who focused on Amazon early on and implemented strategies that would put them at the top of search rankings. And as a result, Today, challenger brands represent the majority of page one of search rankings for the coffee category, and in turn, and also in many instances, they outsell the legacy brands who can kind of no longer rest on the laurels of having the relationships with the retailers and the vast majority of the shelf space. So for challenger brands, having been there for so long, while the big names have kind of tried to catch up, that's allowed them to keep sales velocity going and has only made them stickier at the top. So now in a lot of ways, they're the legacy brands on Amazon, and they've kind of overthrown decades of sort of retail hierarchy and turned it on its head. So basically what you're looking at here is sort of a complete shift in how things work and how the top players are identified and put into their position, and it's manifested itself pretty substantially in this particular category. So it's important for CPGs now to play by these new rules. As tempting as it is, if e-commerce success is in your interest, you have to do the things to win in that arena, even if they differ significantly from the old way. And that is, you need to think and act like a marketer. Optimize, advertise, make sure you're looking good and you're telling a strong brand story that can compete with those of these challenger brands who tend to do that very well. These brands that are e-commerce focused tend to have a more modern marketing mindset, and such branding is something that they do particularly well. Try to ask why consumers are preferring challenger brands. Consider the look and the feel of these brands. Are they geared towards younger audiences? Do they focus on different features and things within the product images and copy and so forth? Which is oftentimes very well thought out with these e-commerce brands. Consider the pack sizes, the variations they're offering. Is the versatility of these challenger brands a factor in what's driving their success? And finally, if you still can't beat them, obviously there are paths to take that many CPGs have pursued. Obviously, acquisition of challenger brands is something that we've seen quite a bit of. We also have several clients that are either actively participating in or have been approached by Amazon to participate in their private label program. And obviously, while it may sacrifice the strength of the in-house brands, or I should say the brands on Amazon, the in-house brands, it's certainly an option of a path to ensuring a healthier future of the company overall.
Great, thanks, Jeff. One correction from earlier, the paper towel example, we saw 12 different paper towel brands. But again, just further to illustrate, challenger brands, these new brands, we're seeing them on Amazon more than anywhere else. It's important for any CPG to be aware of who they are and what category they're entering. As we move on to really looking at the third kind of sort of major consideration, is really looking at consumer buyer behavior and the ability for a CPG company to deliver a product to that customer the way the customer wants it. And this is much of a change of infrastructure, but a couple of trends that we're seeing across the board is when it comes to margins and when it comes to key business metrics that you're looking to evaluate. So this could be gross margin, this could be contribution margin, this could be some other metric you have internally. And what we're seeing is sort of a disconnect from the brands versus consumers, where consumers are really value driven online. They're really looking for that best price. And those online retailers are looking to wholesale those products at the best rate possible, where brands obviously have to focus on profit margins, and we're seeing a little bit of disconnect when it comes to brands fitting in their entire product portfolio into an e-commerce model. Sometimes the normal business metrics you track may not always fit. So in this case, really looking at, and the brands that are winning are really looking at a separate set of metrics or a separate benchmark for success when it comes to e-commerce and rolling out e-commerce products versus in-store. The second thing we're seeing is really looking at quantity. So something as simple as packaging options. We're seeing a lot of consumers, they're willing to buy, and research shows us that they're willing to buy a 3-pack, a 6-pack of something, but they don't want to store a case of one product in their home. So what you see is a sort of disconnect where brands are typically can fulfill and are used to fulfilling either a one pack or an each, or a case on a pallet, and there's a little bit of disconnect when we're talking about e-commerce. And so what we're seeing across the board is this is where you'll see a lot of 3P sellers pop up. And if they don't see a 2-pack or a 3-pack or a 4-pack from your products, they will create those pack sizes and they will variate them to your listing, stealing your market share. So really looking internally and saying, what do we need to do from an infrastructure standpoint, from a distribution standpoint, to make sure we have the right pack sizes, so we can sell a 3-pack, we can sell a 6-pack, and we get that longer inherent customer lifetime value. And the final thing that we're seeing is really when you look at variety packs. So consumers want variety. They want variety in flavors, in sizes, and we're seeing a disconnect where brands are having trouble fulfilling these types of orders. If you look at the organic listings for the term cereal on Amazon today, and again, removing the ad inventory, look at just organic listings, 33%, a third of those organic listings are either variety or multi-packs. So again, it's showing the consumers, the behavior is really to look for options in terms of pack sizes, options in terms of variety packs. I think a big challenge today that I know a lot of CPG companies are looking at, and whether that's hiring the right resources, changing major infrastructure changes, am I going to be able to fulfill? Am I going to be able to fulfill the needs of the consumer in the future? We're also seeing some pressure against warehouse space from folks like Amazon, where these brands are going to have to figure out how to deliver those products to the consumer. And unfortunately, a lot are struggling today. So, again, the ones that are doing it really well are looking internally, doing an evaluation, putting together a plan to really deliver these products in either different options or different variety packs.
Great. Yeah, so some takeaways from that, particularly I think the important thing that needs to be done really is to study those third-party sellers. I think that when you really look at sales, it's not uncommon to have, 3Ps repackaging your product either into some of these new pack sizes or variety packs and doing significant business, sometimes into the hundreds of thousands or so a month in individual ASINs, simply because they're offering the right product in the right quantity at the right price point. On a similar note, Drew touched on this, variety packs are incredibly compelling on e-commerce, particularly when trying to rope in customers who are new to a brand. People, love the idea of trying a little bit of everything, and variety packs perform very well across the board on Amazon. Anything that really can be put into a variety pack, people are usually willing to give it a try. Ultimately, however, these issues may just mean that you have to pursue some of the difficult conversations internally that are going to position your company for success in the future. The cases and niches aren't going to cut it anymore, and you need to find a way to come up with something else. Many of the issues of changing consumer preference and behavior, and simple profitability aren't going to change no matter how many times we, stamp our feet at the problem. It may take a fundamental shift that spreads into operational areas of the business. The example here we talk a lot about is, Costco, club stores. They're not selling your individual item, and they're not usually selling traditional cases. So, it's that in between that needs to be offered to play in that space. And, it very well might be the same for e-commerce. But, we've had a number of CPG grocery clients over the years that, they've tried every which way to get around it. But at the end of the day, getting into some of these pack sizes and so forth that make the most sense for e-commerce is ultimately the only thing that's going to prevent them from hitting a ceiling.
Great, so moving to our last consideration, really talking specifically about Amazon. And we shared a little bit about sort of the market share that Amazon has created. There's a lot of information out there that Amazon is really innovating and going into CPG and grocery as another category to disrupt. When you look at some of the metrics from a dollar standpoint, we're seeing $2.5 to $5 billion market in some of the things like health and personal care, grocery, pet products. And really creates a compelling and meaningful channel for a lot of brands today when you're looking at where does my growth come from. And we work with clients across the board that all are looking to e-commerce to kind of maximize their growth. Amazon is a place to start. You got to get that right first. before rolling out to other marketplaces, although those other marketplaces, and from a global standpoint, are growth opportunities as well. Amazon accounted for 40% upwards of 55% that's reported of e-commerce market share in the US alone. That percentage is expected to rise. So it creates a significant opportunity. And the other thing we talk to a lot of clients about is, Amazon is a marketplace. So if your products, if you're not going to sell your products on Amazon, your products will be sold on Amazon. A third-party seller will sell your products or is already selling your products. So we're advising a lot of our clients that are hesitant to really look at controlling their brand and controlling their products on a marketplace with these types of numbers. The other consideration, really, when you're looking at the complexity of the ecosystem, is it's important to know that Amazon has created on purpose an ecosystem. It's an ecosystem that really started with sort of the transaction. And 3 or 4 years ago, we were talking all about purchasing products and reviews. Price and reviews were the only things we were talking about. Really, what Amazon's done a really nice job doing is creating this ecosystem where you can not only create demand, you can capture that demand, you can capture that customer, you can use Amazon to distribute, fulfill your products, and then you can use Amazon as a review engine. And this is really the big shift we've seen probably in the last 18 months or so, where Amazon is now being looked at not only as an e-commerce site, but as a media company. They're looked at as a place to where consumers are going to research and discover new products, which inherently creates opportunities for brands to position their products in front of consumers. This is one strategic area that you may have an advantage over any challenger brand because you can spend the media dollars to get your products in front of those consumers. And the reason it is such a powerful media company is it's using at the center of everything its data, which we all know is the most powerful data in the world. They have data on transactions, on search history, and we're able to use that data to hit the right consumer at the right time with the right message. So when you look at the ecosystem, the second thing to note here is every part of the ecosystem impacts another part. So the A9 algorithm is based on sales velocity, but if you're out of stock with a certain item that you're running media against, that's going to show Amazon that you have a lot of customers that are hitting your product detail pages that aren't checking out, which is going to limit your organic rank. So everything impacts everything, and to have a good strategy, you really have to understand all areas of the Amazon ecosystem. And for a brand, and the brands that are doing it well are looking at all areas of this and saying, are we maximizing Amazon for what it is? Whether that's a content hub, a distributor, a retailer, a media company, an e-commerce site, are we looking at Amazon and leveraging everything Amazon has to offer to really win? And this is where we're seeing a huge discrepancy between the brands that are winning and the brands that are losing.
Yeah, exactly. So honestly, the takeaway from this is simply that there's a lot that needs to be done on Amazon to win. It's a comprehensive strategy that focuses on discoverability, buyability, media and advertising, a strong operational strategy, catalog management, so much more. There's just so many different tentacles to hit within that within that platform to make sure that everything's operating properly. There's any number of levers that can be pulled at any time, and it's really up to the organization to understand, which levers they need to be pulling at what time to make that, full funnel work like the machine that it needs to be to drive sales velocity. In marketplace strategy, we split these levers into the basic categories you see here, although obviously things can bleed into one another, but you have the optimization of copy for both search, but also for search result page viewing, as we mentioned earlier. Product page design and content, that's something that assists both with conversion and with just strengthening the brand overall. Technical management is something that is a little foreign for some digital marketers, or some marketers in general, obviously, but the concept of catalog management and looking for issues like content changes and rogue variations and that are driven by 3Ps or just simply item suppression. These are all things that significantly affect sales, that are big parts of the e-commerce ecosystem. Obviously, media and advertising, is perhaps the biggest piece of that pie at this point. Again, something not necessarily that most digital marketers are used to dealing with, but the operations side, with those factors we've discussed, like profitability and pack sizes and things like that, is now something you really have to constantly be addressing and looking at. In general, strategic planning across the board to align those factors together. Working directly with Amazon when you have the capability to do so. Promotions. There's just so many different things to be looking at, exploring, planning for holiday seasons and peak seasons. All of these things kind of work work together to create success on the channel.
Great. So some of the key takeaways, it was great to spend some time talking about CPG and the impact of e-commerce is, really number one, e-commerce adaptation is critical for CPG brands. The strategy, focusing on your strategy over relationships is where we see a lot of brands winning today. Know who your competition is. That might be the same competition you have offline. It might be different, but know who your competition is and why they're your competitors. Number four, develop that operational muscle, or at least start the process. We know it's a huge cost. It's a huge plan or lift for a brand to really look internally and say, are we set up infrastructurally for the future? Really look at that muscle and say, do we have it to win? And then finally, we think this is a very, very important channel. The data shows it's an important channel. Make sure you have dedicated resources to win. The brands that are winning today have resources internally dedicated to thinking about how am I going to take my brand from where we're at today and capture that future growth opportunities. And although there's major considerations I talked about at the beginning, these are some of the larger considerations that we would advise you to look at, looking at not only where your brands are today, but more importantly, where is the growth opportunity and how do we take advantage of it?
Great. Thank you so much, Drew and Jeff. That was super valuable. All right, this is just a reminder that the recording and slide deck will be sent out in an email follow-up, so please make sure to keep an eye out for that. We thank everyone who has to hop off for joining us today. We are going to move into the question and answer portion. All right, let me pull this up here. It looks like the first question we have here is we find it difficult to maintain brand integrity and difficult to monitor listings with the amount of SKUs. What do you recommend we do?
That's a great question. I think particularly for CPGs, with by nature, low price point items that are very friendly to the to third party resellers. Certainly, also products with large distribution networks. That's a pretty normal issue that I'm assuming most of the folks out there listening right now can relate to. This obviously can manifest itself in so many different ways. We talked about it a few minutes ago. It's content changes, it's duplicate listings, it's duplicate variations, it's all different sorts of ways that the 3Ps are trying to sort of deceive either consumers or just sort of mess with the platform a little bit to garner some sales without having to compete for a buy box and so forth. In short, there really isn't, historically, the best way to do this is, or not the best way, but the only way to do it was through fairly manual means. You really had to, continue to monitor those things and really be on the ball, from a standpoint of following up through, through cases and so forth with Amazon to identify and correct these issues and then make sure that they go through. We at Marketplace Strategy, obviously, that's something that we do for our clients actively. It's too big of a bear, certainly for some of our bigger clients, for them to handle internally, but also it's too big of a bear for us to even handle internally to do it manually. So we actually developed an internal proprietary tool we call MPS Intelligence, and basically what that does is it monitors product pages of our clients. It basically stores the appropriate content, and then multiple times a day it will scan the content to see if it matches with what it's supposed to say, essentially, and then we're able to easily pull the correct content and resubmit it if for some reason it gets changed, whether on purpose or by accident. by a by a third-party reseller. Similarly, we're obviously always monitoring for emerging duplicates, looking to keep variations and things consistent. At the end of the day, it's a very time-consuming process. We have this tool internally that we use that scans multiple times a day, basically to automate it as much as we possibly can and to make it more of a perfect or less of an imperfect process, I should say. It's going to be a challenge, but that's why some of these tools are helpful. I think there's some third-party tools out there that do similar things. But yeah, I mean, particularly for CPGs, that's a big part of what we do. And, it's unsexy certainly, but it's something that when you look at it at the end of the day, it does typically have a pretty significant effect on sales, particularly the sales attributed to the brand versus 3P.
Well, for the sake of time, for hitting went over our 40-minute mark here, we will answer the rest of the questions via direct email follow-up with each of the people who have asked us a question this afternoon. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. And please make sure to tune into all of our Amazon Vendor Strategy Series webinars, which are available on our website, marketplacestrategy.com. Thank you and have a great day.